All right, everybody, welcome to our deep dive today. And today we're going to be talking about something that, honestly, we all probably think about a lot more than we realize, which is wastewater treatment.
Right.
It's something that is, uh, absolutely crucial to modern life, and yet it's one of those things we kind of just take for granted.
Yeah.
So you sent us over some really fascinating stuff about uh, designing treatment plants and, controlling pollutants and even recycling the water after it's been treated. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It is. It's a really important aspect of our infrastructure that a lot of people don't think about. But yeah, you're right. It is something we all use every day.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of made me realize, like, I flush the toilet and then I don't really think about where it goes from there. But of course, it doesn't just magically disappear. Right?
Exactly. It's there's a whole hidden world beneath our feet, so to speak,
Hmm.
that takes care of all that.
And it's a pretty complex world at that, right? Like you mentioned, designing these plants, treatment plants. What goes into that?
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges in creating a system that can handle, well, everything that we send down the drain?
Right. Well, I mean, you got to think about the massive volumes of water that these plants have to deal with, first of all. And it's not just a constant flow. It fluctuates throughout the day,
Oh, I see.
you know, peak times, obviously. And then the water itself, it's not just water. It's got all sorts of pollutants in it. Everything from, what you'd expect, like food scraps and soap,
Right.
to things that are less obvious, like pharmaceuticals and industrial chemicals.
Wow.
So designing a plant that can handle all that, remove it efficiently, and also protect the environment, it's a pretty big challenge.
Makes sense. Yeah. So how do they actually clean the water? Like, what's the process involved?
Well, it's a multi-stage process, but in simple terms, the first step is to remove the solids, all the big stuff. You can think of it like a giant strainer.
Right.
And then the real magic happens. They introduce bacteria to break down the organic matter. It's kind of like nature's own cleanup crew.
Wow. So there's like a whole biological process happening in there.
Right. And then finally, the water is disinfected, usually with some kind of, chlorine or UV light, to kill any harmful bacteria or viruses before it's released back into the environment.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not just about filtering out the big stuff. It's really about this whole, like you said, a biological process
Yeah.
to kind of break down all those pollutants.
Exactly. Yeah.
And speaking of things we don't want in our water, your notes also mentioned something about controlling pollutants and effluents.
Right.
So for someone who doesn't speak wastewater, what does that really mean? What are we talking about here?
Sure. Well, effluent is just the technical term for the treated wastewater that's released from the plant.
Okay.
And when we talk about controlling pollutants and effluents, it's really about making sure that the water that's released back into the environment meets certain standards. We don't want to be polluting our rivers and lakes with things that could harm people or wildlife.
Right. And like you said, it's not just the obvious stuff. I mean, you mentioned pharmaceuticals and industrial chemicals. Like what kind of things are we finding in there?
Oh, it's a pretty wide range. You've got things like painkillers, antibiotics, hormones, even things like flame retardants and pesticides. And then there's microplastics, which are a growing concern.
Microplastics. Wow. So even tiny, tiny things we can barely see are making their way into the system.
Exactly. They come from all sorts of sources, from our clothes, from cosmetics, from plastic packaging. They get washed down the drain and they can end up in our waterways.
Makes you think twice about where you're putting down the drain, for sure.
Yeah.
I was also reading about how some treatment plants are even starting to use artificial intelligence to optimize the treatment process.
Yeah.
Have you seen that in action?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI and machine learning, they're becoming increasingly common in wastewater treatment. And what they do is they can analyze data in real time, to adjust the treatment process, make it more efficient and effective. Like, for example, sensors can monitor water quality and flow rates,
Right.
and AI can then adjust the amount of chemicals or aeration that's needed. It's a really fascinating area, actually.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
But I guess it also makes you wonder about the workforce, right? Are we going to see robots running treatment plants in the future?
I don't think it's about replacing humans entirely. It's more about using technology to enhance their skills and capabilities.
Right.
The role of operators is evolving. They need to be comfortable working with more sophisticated technology.
Sure. And that kind of brings us to, I think, one of the really exciting topics, which is, turning this treated water into something that we can actually use.
Right.
Your sources talked about recycling treated water. And it sounds pretty amazing. Is it really possible to turn, what started as sewage
Yeah.
into something that's usable?
Yeah, definitely. It's happening more and more. In some places, treated wastewater is used to irrigate parks and golf courses, or even to replenish groundwater aquifers.
Really?
Yeah, these underground layers of rock and sediment, they store vast amounts of water.
Right.
And recharging them with treated water can help combat water scarcity, which is a growing problem.
That's incredible. So, like that park I walked through, like that could be watered with recycled water.
It's quite possible, yeah. And in many cases, the treated water that's used for these purposes is actually cleaner than the water you'd find naturally in some rivers and lakes.
Huh?
But, public perception can be a bit of a challenge. Some people hear recycled wastewater and they might get a little squeamish.
Yeah, I totally get it. There's definitely like a yuck factor to overcome.
Right. But the science is there.
But yeah, it sounds like water recycling has a lot of potential, especially as we're facing, increasing water scarcity around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really promising solution. And the technology is constantly evolving. We're seeing new innovations in things like membrane filtration, advanced oxidation processes, even using natural systems like wetlands to further purify the water.
So, if we can turn wastewater into a resource, what other possibilities are we maybe overlooking? Like, what if we could extract valuable nutrients from it or even generate energy?
You're on the right track. Resource recovery from wastewater is a really hot area of research right now.
Huh.
Some treatment plants are already producing biogas from the organic matter in sewage,
Wow.
and that biogas can be used to generate electricity or heat, making the plant more sustainable. And research is ongoing into extracting things like phosphorus and nitrogen, valuable nutrients that can be used as fertilizers.
So, what started as this deep dive into what happens after we flush has turned into a conversation about sustainability and innovation and even tackling, some of the really big challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, I think it highlights how interconnected all these things are. Wastewater treatment, it's not just about cleaning up our messes, it's about rethinking how we manage resources, how we create a more sustainable future.
Wow. It really is. Next time I turn on the tap, I'll definitely be thinking about that. The journey that water took to get there and all the incredible science and engineering that made it possible.
Yeah,
It really is, like you said, a whole hidden world we often take for granted, but it's absolutely crucial to our health, our environment, and our future.
absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into the world of wastewater treatment.
My pleasure. It was a great conversation.
Until next time, everybody, keep those brains curious.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.